My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon for my sins, and for the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, St. Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Jesus, October is my favourite month for saints. When we think about the lovely saints that we keep in this month, we have so many of the big hitters, the famous ones, the celebrities, we could say. The month begins with Saint Therese of Lisieux, not soon after the archangels at the end of September. Saint Therese begins the month. Saint Francis of Assisi, Our Lady of the Rosary, 7th of October. We have here in Britain Saint John Henry Newman, a man of incredible writing, incredible poetry, a really beautiful relationship with the Lord. Saint Teresa of Avila, the great reformer of the Carmelites. Today's lovely feast day, St. John Paul II. What a lovely day this is, especially for maybe those who've grown up in the church in the last 20 or 30 years, who've called John Paul their father, their spiritual father. And later this month, we keep, at the end of the month, All Saints. We get them all this month. This is always my favourite time, Jesus, because it's an opportunity to say, these are such great figures. You know, others I haven't mentioned, St. John the 23rd, the Pope who began the Second Vatican Council. I mean, such major moments have occurred in the lives of these men and women. And so maybe we could just pray a little bit about sainthood, Jesus. And certainly when I think of John Paul II, that's one of the words I associate with him. I just associate the word saint. Yes, he was a holy man, a man of incredible love for Jesus, incredibly clear in his pointing us to you, Jesus. In all of his writings, John Paul II wrote about so many different topics. In the Eucharist, the Rosary, Our Lady, the moral life, doctrinal teachings, seminary formation, so many things John Paul covered in the space of his 27 years. The theology of the body, which didn't exist before he became the Pope, and now is the go-to for how to understand our heart, the human heart, and human interaction with another heart. John Paul's writings are so important in so many areas of our life. But if there's one word that I keep in my mind, Jesus, when I think of your friend John Paul, it's saint. John Paul II became famous, we could say, for canonizing saints, for making sanctity a real lived thing. In the 600 years prior to John Paul II taking over as the Pope, there'd been 300 or thereabouts canonizations of saints. With John Paul II, in 27 years, there were another 482. He canonized 482 men and women, and from so many different walks of life. Maybe before John Paul it would have been typical for saints to be men and women religious, priests, bishops, popes, those who've, in a very obvious, vowed way, given themselves over to Jesus. And Jesus, you call everyone to sainthood, and that's what John Paul recognized. These men and women from all different walks of life, laymen, laywomen, married men and women. We have the whole experience of the Christian family. That's what John Paul II gave us. This is the thing I associate with him, is the excitement he had when looking at the life of an individual and saying, yes, this person can be for us an example of sanctity, an example to take into modern life, into our daily life, and say, this is who I want to emulate. This is how I want to live my Christian life, or the way this person lived it inspires me. And so it's right, Jesus, that John Paul should appear as a saint in the month of saints, we could say. and just a few days before that great day where we keep All Saints. And so it's an opportunity for us today in our prayer to speak to you, Jesus, about our own sanctity, our own call to holiness. Where are we at with that? Where am I at right now on the journey of holiness? Do I kind of know myself? Yes, I know I'm called to be a saint as a theological truth, a theological reality. I read it in a document. People have said it many times to me. I know I'm called to be a saint. Full stop. Is that where I've left that road behind? Or is it for me a daily struggle? I was in a talk recently with a priest, and he was speaking to some young people, and he said he named 3 saints that he'd met in life, and he said, what do those 3 people have in common? And he reflected, we were thinking of ideas, and he reflected to us, each of them went to confession every week. Sanctity truly is something we struggle with. So saints aren't those who are, well, in a sense, the celebrities of the church. This is my favourite month of saints, but in a sense, it's misleading to think of the St. Francis's and the St. John Paul II's and the St. Teresa of Avila's. If it stays there, then we're just standing back in this kind of piece of artwork that we're looking at and thinking, gosh, they're beautiful. But it's not me. I'm not a piece of artwork. I'm stuck in the mud. Well, Jesus, they were stuck in the mud too. And maybe my struggles are particularly key in my mind today. As I pray to you, maybe all I can see is my weakness, and the word sanctity just doesn't even relate to where I'm at in my experience of you, my experience of prayer, perhaps. Well, John Paul can be an inspiration to us, not just to be somebody who was really good, but to be somebody who offered to us the idea that sanctity is possible. Sanctity is flesh and blood. Sanctity is real. I remember taking St. Maximilian Kolbe as my confirmation name when I received the sacrament of confirmation. And what struck me as a teenager receiving that sacrament was that I could see photos of St. Maximilian Kolbe. There were photos, his life coincided with events I was learning about in school at the time, the Second World War. He was real. He was a real man. He was a real priest. He really gave his life for somebody else who was also real. All of a sudden, this idea of sanctity exploded in my mind. It wasn't somebody I could put on a shelf, quite literally on a shelf, and say, what a lovely statue. No. Sanctity, John Paul II says, is real. And curiously, it was John Paul II who gave us Maximilian Kolbe, gave us so many other saints that we are now household names. Pier Giorgio Frassati, John Paul II beatified him, gave us an example of this young man, a young man who can be for us a great witness. Now in our day, we have Blessed Carlo Acutis, another young man who, a great example of holiness in the middle of the world. So what's the difference then? What's the difference between the saints that are canonized now and that we celebrate this month and we rejoice in, and me in the mud, perhaps, as I feel? For me, John Paul II was also identified by his love for the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, Jesus, the Holy Spirit that you sent us at Pentecost, he's the one who changes all my daily stuff into glorious sanctity. This is such a mystery. John Paul II wrote this: on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit was sent to sanctify the church forever. That was the point. That was the reason he was given. It was the reason we received the Holy Spirit. John Paul II also says this: the hidden breath of the divine Spirit enables the human spirit to open in its turn before the saving and sanctifying self-opening of God. Wow, what does that mean? It means the Spirit given to me opens me like a flower to a God who is already opened to me, the saving and sanctifying self-opening of God. John Paul was the amazing theologian, thought about things so deeply, and yet what he's saying is also so accessible. Come, Holy Spirit, open me out like a flower, like a opening to the sunshine, as it were, on the beginning of a new day. opening up to the reality of God in my life. Jesus, I give you today all the real stuff, the real mess, the real weakness. I give it to you and ask you to make it into sanctity today. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.